Have you ever had a dream so real you could smell their perfume? Feel the familiar weight of their hand on your shoulder? A dream where someone you've lost is standing right there, not as a memory, but as a presence. Recently, during the Zhongyuan Festival, or the Ghost Festival, in many parts of Asia, a time dedicated to honoring ancestors and spirits, I found myself thinking about these moments. These visitations, they are deeply personal, profoundly comforting, and, let's be honest, sometimes a little unsettling. And they open up a question that sits right at the intersection of our deepest emotions and the strange workings of our minds. When we commune with the dead, in dreams or in quiet moments of reflection, what is actually going on? Is it a message from beyond? Or is it our own brain doing the hard, messy, beautiful work of grieving? Today, we're not looking for a single answer. Instead, we're going to explore the landscape of loss itself, a place where psychology and spirituality are not enemies, but neighbors, trying to describe the same vast, mysterious territory. For a long time, the prevailing wisdom in psychology, stemming from Freud, was that the goal of grief was detachment. To heal, you had to sever the bonds with the deceased, find closure, and, essentially, move on. But anyone who has experienced profound loss knows it doesn't really work like that, does it? It's a bit like being told to forget a language you've spoken your entire life. Thankfully, psychology has evolved. In the 1990s, a more compassionate and, frankly, more realistic idea emerged: the theory of continuing bonds. This theory proposes that death doesn't end a relationship, it transforms it. The goal isn't to let go, but to find new ways to maintain a connection, to integrate the person you lost into your life in a new form. Talking to them, keeping their photo on your desk, making their favorite recipe on their birthday, these aren't signs of being stuck. They are often healthy, adaptive ways of maintaining that bond. It's a psychological permission slip to do what many cultures have done for centuries, to keep our dead with us, as advisors, as memories, as a continued part of our story. But, there's a nuance here. Psychology also recognizes that some forms of connection can keep us tethered to pain in a way that prevents healing. There's a difference between a comforting internal dialogue and a persistent, distressing sense that the person is physically present, which might hinder the acceptance of the loss. It's not about whether we maintain a bond, but how that bond functions in our life. Does it offer comfort and support, or does it keep us from engaging with the reality of our own ongoing life? It's a fine, personal line, and nowhere is that line more blurred than in our dreams. That dream of a dead relative. It feels different, doesn't it? More vivid, more emotionally intense than a typical dream. Researchers call these visitation dreams, and a huge number of people who have them, over 2/3 in some surveys, see them as a genuine connection, a real visit. They often report waking up with a sense of peace, reassurance, or having received a message of guidance. From a purely psychological standpoint, these dreams are a masterpiece of the grieving brain. Sleep, and especially the dreaming phase, is when our brain gets to work processing emotions and consolidating memories. A dream of a loved one can be our mind's way of working through unresolved feelings, or a way to access the wisdom and support they once provided us in life. It's a simulation, a safe space to continue a conversation that was cut short, to say the things left unsaid. But here's where it gets interesting. A psychological explanation doesn't have to cancel out a spiritual one. Think of it like this: describing a sunset in terms of atmospheric light. Scattering doesn't make it any less beautiful. The science of how it happens doesn't invalidate the profound personal meaning of the experience. Our brain, using the deeply familiar and beloved image of our lost one, is performing a vital emotional function. For the dreamer, that experience is the comfort. That experience is the message. The mechanism, neurobiology, and the meaning, a spiritual connection, can coexist. They are two different languages describing the same powerful event. So why do these dreams, these feelings of presence, seem to spike at certain times? Around anniversaries, birthdays, or cultural festivals like Zhongyuan, there's a well-documented phenomenon in psychology known as the anniversary effect. Our bodies and our minds keep their own calendar of grief. Dates, seasons, and sensory cues associated with a significant event can trigger a resurgence of emotions, memories, and even physical sensations tied to the original loss. These cultural festivals are, in a way, institutionalized anniversary effects. They are collective, societal reminders that give us permission to remember. They create a shared space for grief, telling us, today is a day to think of them. This cultural cue primes our minds, making the memories and the emotions associated with our loved ones more accessible, both in our waking thoughts and, yes, in our dreams. So, it's not just you. It's a powerful intersection of personal memory, collective culture, and the rhythms of time itself. In our time, this landscape of memory has a new, uncharted territory: the digital world. What do we do with the ghosts in the machine? The social media profiles of those who have passed away become digital memorials. On one hand, they can be incredible sources of comfort, a place for collective mourning where friends and family can share memories, offering a sense of community and ongoing support. It's a modern expression of continuing bonds, an archive of a life that can be visited any time. But there's a fierce debate here because it's a double-edged sword. For some, these preserved profiles create a kind of ambiguous loss. The person is physically gone, but psychologically, they remain present online, making it difficult to process the finality of their absence. Unexpected birthday reminders or algorithmically surfaced memories can be jarring, triggering fresh waves of pain when you least expect it. It raises a question unique to our generation. Does a digital ghost ever let us finish grieving? Or does it create a grief loop, an endless memorial that prevents us from moving forward? There is no right answer, only what feels right for the individual, highlighting the need to navigate our digital afterlives with intention and care. This idea of memory being shaped and reshaped brings us to one last subtle point: the potential downside of ritual. Rituals, lighting a candle, visiting a grave, sharing the same story every year are cornerstones of grief. They give us structure in the chaos and a tangible way to express our love. But what happens when a ritual becomes rote, mechanical? There's a fascinating concept in neuroscience called memory reconsolidation. Every time we recall a memory, it doesn't just play back like a recording. For a short period, it becomes fluid, malleable, and can be subtly changed before it's stored again. This is how our relationship with the past evolves. The risk of a ritual that never changes is that it can lock in a single version of that person. We might end up remembering the ritual of remembering more than the complex, evolving person themselves. The memory can become a static, flattened version of who they were, preventing our own emotional relationship with them from growing and changing as we do. It's a reminder that a living memory requires not just repetition, but reflection. So, where does this leave us? In a place of beautiful, profound complexity. Grief is not a problem to be solved. It's a landscape to be navigated. Our minds will build bridges to the past through continuing bonds, through dreams, through digital spaces to help us carry our loved ones forward. The psychological view gives us a framework for understanding how this happens. The neurological wiring, the emotional processing, the cognitive biases, The spiritual or personal view is what gives that experience its sacred meaning. And they don't invalidate each other, they enrich each other. Believing your grandmother visited you in a dream to tell you she's okay can be a profoundly healing experience. Understanding that this dream was also your brain's incredible way of regulating overwhelming emotion and finding a sense of peace doesn't diminish that feeling. It adds a layer of awe for the intricate, mysterious, and deeply compassionate machine that is the human mind. The relationship doesn't end, it changes. And our task is not to sever it, but to find a healthy, honest, and loving way to continue the bond. To allow the memory to live and breathe and evolve with us. So I'm curious, and I invite you to share in the comments if you feel comfortable. What has your experience been? How do you keep your connections alive? Your story could be the very thing someone else needs to read today to feel a little less alone in this vast, shared human journey